Hello students, I'm just recording this video discussion for you so we can wrap up on Franklin before I leave. It's late on Monday in my office here on campus, and we're leaving very early in the morning. I just wanted to touch base on a few things and present this screencast for you. I was going through your challenge questions here, and you guys did a really great job thinking about Ben Franklin, and whether one of the questions asked whether he is indeed considered a part of American literature or not. We know that he was an interesting figure, an important figure, but is this literature? That's kind of an interesting question. But I thought I would just touch upon a few things here that were left over from our class discussion from last class period. One of the things I like to do when I do the Franklin unit in class is I like to just show some iconography from Franklin. So we talked about how he is a pre-revolutionary, a post-revolutionary, and in the midst of the revolutionary figure. And look at these images from the American Passages website that illustrate the different representations of Franklin over the years. Hopefully you can see those on your screen there. And this is the one that I always find fascinating. This is an early portrait of Franklin. And you can see he's got the periwig on here, and he's dressed up in a very formal sort of English attire, kind of what you would expect to see in England at the time. Very formal, right? This is not what you think of when you think of Franklin. And then over the course of his career, his image changes until he becomes kind of this simple, not wearing a formal dress. He apparently really impressed the folks in England, or in France when he was a diplomat there, by wearing his coonskin cap, by dressing in sort of frontier clothing. This is the Franklin that we tend to think about more commonly. Here he is in his coonskin cap. They apparently got quite a kick out of that. So he was perceived as a scientist. He was perceived as a philosopher. He was perceived as a great sort of polyglot, a person who was sort of a Renaissance man. And we touched upon all those things in class last class period. But I thought that I would just touch upon a few other points that were brought to light by your questions. One of the things I would do is I would have us finish this first part of the autobiography, which we didn't really get to in class, and that is we went through most of the material where we talked about how he had addressed this letter, this first part of his autobiography ostensibly to his son, and that he outlines his sort of family background and some of the reasons why he would record his autobiography. But we didn't get to the part which I think we went over the part where he sat in the printing house during lunch and ate his vegetarian lunch and read and used the money that he was saving on not taking board with his brother as part of the apprenticeship, and instead using that to purchase books and spend time reading. And so we talked about how that really was illustrative of the Franklin ethos, which is the sort of self-made man, the self-education, and really just channeling those Enlightenment ideals. I think also that there's a great, somewhat of a myth, but also I think a realistic sort of sense of Franklin, who was this person who came from virtually nothing and really made himself one of the central figures in this new country. And so here we have in the first part of the autobiography, around page 496 in your text, but I love this image. He comes in, he's had this perilous voyage, they've been out on the water, he threw a man into the water who was getting into his business. They're rowing very hard. He has hardly any money to his name, and he comes into Philadelphia, and he just becomes aligned. He's the person who is most commonly associated with Philadelphia and the Sons of Liberty and all that sort of stuff. And he comes into the city, and this is how the passage goes on page 496. I have been the more particular in this description of my journey, and shall be so for my first entry into that city, that you may in your mind, dear son, compare such unlikely beginning with the figure I have since made there in Philadelphia. I was in my working dress, my best clothes being to come round by sea. I was dirty from my journey, my pockets were stuffed out with shirts and stockings. I knew no soul, nor where to look for lodging. I was fatigued with traveling, rowing, and want of rest. I was very hungry, and my whole stock of cash consisted of a Dutch dollar and about a shilling of copper. The latter I gave to people of the boat for my passage. So even though he doesn't have any money, he pays his fair wage on the ship. And they at first refused it on the account of my rowing, but I insisted on their taking it. So even though he rowed most of the way, he paid them. A man being sometimes more generous when he has but a little money than when he has plenty, perhaps through fear of being thought to have but little. Then I walked up the street, gazing about, till near the market house I met a boy with bread. I had made many a meal on bread, and inquiring where he got it, I went immediately to the baker's he directed me to in Second Street, and I asked for a biscuit, intending such as we had in Boston, but they, it seems, were not made in Philadelphia. Then I asked for a three-penny loaf, which was told they had none such. So not considering or knowing the difference of money and the greater cheapness, nor the names of this bread, with a formal discussion of how to buy a bun, I bade him give me 3 pennies worth of any sort. He gave me accordingly 3 great puffy rolls. I was surprised at the quantity, but took it, and having no room in my pockets, walked off with a roll under each arm and eating the other. So Franklin's coming in his work clothes. He's come through the perilous journey. He's got 2 of these giant loaves of bread under his either arm, and he's chomping on another one. And this is how he makes his entrance into Philadelphia. Thus I went up Market Street as far North Street, passing the door of Mr. Reed, my future wife's father, when she was standing in the door, saw me, and thought I made, as I certainly did, a most awkward and ridiculous appearance. Then I turned and went down Chestnut Street, part of Walnut Street, eating my roll all the way, and coming round, found myself again at Market Street Wharf, where the boat I came in, to which I went and for a drop of the river water, and being filled with one of my rolls, gave the other 2 to a woman and her child that came down the river in the boat with us and were waiting to go no farther. Come on! Really? He pays the charity to the boat when he doesn't need to. He's got the puffy rolls. He's using his money so wisely. And then he gives his remaining loaves to the people that were also on the boat. Thus refreshed, I walked up the street, which by this time had many clean-dressed people in it who were all walking the same way. I joined them, and thereby was led into the great meeting house of the Quakers near the market. I sat down among them, and after looking round for a while, hearing nothing said, being very drowsy through labor and want of rest the preceding night, I fell fast asleep, and continued to do till the meeting broke up, when one was kind enough to rouse me. This was therefore the first house I was in or slept in Philadelphia. And you know, the Society of Friends, or the Quakers, you generally go into a meeting, a church meeting, and you just sit until the light of the Spirit strikes you, and you speak out. And instead he slept, and they let him sleep. And it's kind of appropriate, given what we will discuss about his deist tendencies and his sense of religion, that his first appearance in Philadelphia should be of this very frugal sort, and that he should refresh himself on 3 puffy rolls, or just 1 puffy roll, and he gives the rest away. And then he finds himself in the warm embrace of the service of friends in a Quaker meeting house in Philadelphia, where he takes a nap. That's Franklin in a nutshell.